Today's episode is called The People Safety Case Inside the Nuclear Baseline. Here is the hook. In nuclear, we talk endlessly about hardware, reactors, and containment, but the Office for Nuclear Regulation just handed us the blueprint for the software of safety, the people, the structure, and the competence that keep everything upright when things get complicated. I am talking about the Technical Assessment Guide on the function and content of the nuclear baseline. I read it, and it is surprisingly gripping. It says every licensee must be able to prove at all times that its organization, its posts, roles, staffing, and skills are suitable and sufficient to control nuclear safety across the full sweep of its business. Not just in calm weather, through change, emergencies, decommissioning, supply chain turbulence, even those latent risks that do not bite until later. So let us start simple. What exactly is the nuclear baseline, and why does the Office for Nuclear Regulation care so much?
Think of the nuclear baseline as the formal people safety case. It is the licensee's evidence that its organizational structure, staffing levels, and competencies are, and remain, suitable and sufficient to manage nuclear safety in every operational state and through the facility life cycle. It anchors change control under License Condition 36 on organizational capability, is an important record under License Condition 6, and ties directly to License Condition 10 on training, License Condition 12 on suitably qualified and experienced persons, and License Condition 17 on management systems. Legally, it sits inside a wider net, the health and safety at work, etc. Act 1974 puts the duty to protect employees and others on the employer, and the management of health and safety at work regulations, 1999, require arrangements for planning, organizing, controlling, monitoring, and reviewing risk controls, appointing competent assistants, and providing adequate training. The baseline is how a licensee proves it has the right people, in the right roles, with the right authority and competence to uphold that duty.
That is the foundation, but the guide gets very specific about who counts and how. I want to unpack 3 phrases that leapt out: intelligent customer, design authority, and core safety capability. And then there is this embedded contractor idea, plus a utilization factor that sounded like a finance metric but is actually about human availability. Walk me through those.
Core safety capability is the minimum in-house knowledge, experience, and resources that must reside with the licensee to maintain control and oversight of nuclear safety, always. It includes the intelligent customer function and the design authority function. Intelligent customer is the ability to know what work is needed, specify it, set the standards, supervise and control it, review and accept outputs, and own the outcomes, even when work is delivered by contractors. Design authority is the licensee's technical brain and conscience for plant design and the safety case. Contractors can contribute, but the licensee must retain enough in-house competence to understand and govern the work. Embedded contractors, those onboarded into the licensee's processes, culture, and competence system, can be part of core capability and even act as intelligent customers. All of this ties to the utilization factor, the realistic proportion of each person's time that is actually available for their accountabilities after leave, training, sickness, and, crucially, any non-nuclear duties are netted out. The guide is explicit. Long absences over 4 weeks require a formal risk assessment, and allocating multiple roles to one post must not create conflicts. For example, someone should not simultaneously hold an operational role and a governance role that second-guesses it.
The Office for Nuclear Regulation also sets this inside a cathedral of standards, safety assessment principles, Western European Nuclear Regulators Association safety reference levels, and International Atomic Energy Agency fundamental safety principles. Can you give me the tour without turning this into a standards recital?
Here is the tour with the lights on. The Office for Nuclear Regulation's safety assessment principles give you 4 organizational pillars: leadership, capable organization, decision-making, and learning from experience. On humans in the loop, there is proportionate task analysis to derive staffing, roles, competence, training, communications, and to review workload in periodic safety reviews and emergency exercises, plus a clear statement that staffing must be sufficient in all operational states. For decommissioning, it requires an organization and staffing baseline. For accidents, it requires planning that identifies how many operators and staff you need and with what skills. Cross-reference technical assessment guides, then zoom in on training and assuring personnel competence, organizational capability, licensee core safety and intelligent customer capabilities, staffing levels and task organization, function and content of a safety management prospectus, supply chain and retaining intelligent customer capability, design authority capability, and nuclear safety advice and independent challenge. Internationally, Western European Nuclear Regulators Association reference levels require you to justify and document your organizational structure, reassess it when changes may be safety significant, analyze resource needs systematically, retain enough in-house staff to understand the licensing basis and actual design and operation, and maintain in-house intelligent customer capability. Integrated management system must first be geared to nuclear safety. The International Atomic Energy Agency adds the fundamental principle that the prime responsibility rests with the licensee, and in specific safety requirements demand documented roles, responsibilities, authority, communication lines, and analysis of organizational changes. General safety requirements on leadership and management for safety requires provision of resources and positive safety culture, and that organizational changes with safety implications are identified and analyzed. The Office for Nuclear Regulation's own licensing nuclear installations document underscores it. The nuclear baseline must demonstrate suitability and sufficiency, and it should not be static.
Let us talk content. If I am a licensee writing my nuclear baseline, what must I include so that it is not just a glossy chart but a working safety instrument?
Start with scope. Capture all posts and roles that could directly or indirectly affect nuclear safety, positively or negatively, immediately or latently. That means governance roles, intelligent customer and design authority, safety case authors and independent peer assessors, control room teams, maintainers on safety-related systems, shift teams and task organization, those drafting safety documentation, and those supervising contractors. Describe your structure and the functional responsibilities, lines of authority, and internal and external communication, clearly, in writing. Include off-site corporate functions that influence nuclear safety and oversight of tenants carrying out licensable activities. Break the organization down to the level where further description adds no value. Do not stop at managerial tiers because technicians and operators often carry nuclear significant responsibility. Align with the safety management prospectus so the baseline reflects what the prospectus says about governance, processes, and knowledge capture. For staffing, either present the derived demand with rationale and compare it to the actual complement, or show why current staffing is demonstrably adequate, but do not simply assert the status quo. Map posts to roles, and show there are no conflicting responsibilities when multiple roles sit with one post. Articulate utilization factors and the assumptions behind them, and acknowledge that after you implement any organizational change, you will monitor sufficiency with leading and lagging indicators.
Give me the contractor playbook. When are contractors inside the baseline? When are they outside? And what changes for intelligent customer oversight?
If a contractor is embedded, onboarded into the licensee's systems, trained to the licensee's arrangements and culture, and managed like an employee, or if they perform intelligent customer roles on the licensee's behalf, they belong in the nuclear baseline. They are subject to the licensee's competence assurance, line management, discipline, and succession planning. The baseline should identify which roles are held by non-licensee staff so you can see vulnerabilities and manage the employee-contractor balance. For contractors outside the baseline, project-based suppliers and most of the supply chain, control them through robust project management arrangements, clear specifications, contract management, assurance that the contractor assigns enough competent people, and appropriate scrutiny and supervision. In that case, the baseline still includes your internal posts that provide intelligent customer, design authority, and oversight for that work. And when you decide to use more contractor resource, your decision-making must weigh the impact on core capability and not overload your intelligent customer function. The Western European Nuclear Regulators Association, ONR, emphasizes that you must always retain in-house sufficient competent staff to understand your licensing basis and to act as intelligent customer.
The guide leans into performance indicators rather than micromanaging every task analysis. If I am a senior manager listening to this, what dial should I be watching to know whether my nuclear baseline is healthy?
3 families of dials. First, complement. Do you have enough people at the right time, matched to program need, without chronic overload? Watch staffing against the baseline, overtime and excessive hours, and backlogs, especially maintenance, engineering changes, and safety case deliverables. Second, competence. Are the right skills in place and maintained? Track suitably qualified and experienced person status, training completion and refreshers, the quality of outputs, and findings from internal challenge. Third, nuclear safety achievement. Are safety functions being delivered effectively? Combine leading indicators, quality and timeliness of work, completion of critical checks, effectiveness of oversight, with some lagging indicators for learning. Use them to monitor known vulnerabilities from your baseline and to trigger action before performance degrades.
I love the living document theme. This is not a set and forget organogram. It breathes. What are the triggers and mechanics to keep it alive, especially when big changes hit?
Mechanically, many licensees keep the baseline live through a position management database. Otherwise, review and consolidate changes at least annually, even if nothing seems to have changed. Substantively, tie baseline review to license condition 36 management of change. Triggers include step changes in project stage or lifecycle phase, proposed shifts from employees to contractors in baseline roles, changes in scope of work, competence changes for post holders or role requirements, cumulative low category changes, or changes to non-baseline posts that affect baseline capacity. A like-for-like replacement of one competent post holder with another does not trigger license condition 36 unless you replace an employee with a contractor. Before moving into a new phase, commissioning, operations changes, decommissioning, use hold points to confirm that skills and competencies are in place, and build baseline improvement actions directly into work plans so gaps and succession issues are actively tracked and closed.
There is a pair of practical questions leaders always ask, planning and proof. How do you plan ahead so you're not surprised, and what documentary trail proves you're in control?
Planning starts with a medium and long-term staffing process linked to your program, not just today's shift roster. You need visibility of demand growth, scarce skills, retirements, and dependencies on singleton experts. The guide expects a vulnerability analysis. Identify single points of failure, multiple or conflicting roles, over-reliance on contractors, and demographic risks, and then show credible succession and contingency, whether recruiting, redeploying, slowing work, or temporarily using contractors under intelligent customer oversight. Proof comes from integration, a baseline that cross-references your competence management system, suitably qualified and experienced person registers, training under License Condition 10, Design Authority Policy Intelligent Customer Arrangements, organizational change, staffing derivation and task organization, and independent nuclear safety advice and challenge, each under the relevant specific technical assessment guides. The safety management prospectus is the narrative, the baseline is the evidence.
Zoom back to basics for a second. The document defines posts and roles, and it makes a big point that roles, not job titles, drive inclusion in the baseline. Why does that distinction matter?
Because nuclear risk follows responsibilities, not org charts. A post is the slot on the structure. A role is the specific work or accountability. One post holder may carry several roles, sometimes concurrently. It is the responsibilities that decide whether a role belongs in the baseline. If any responsibility can affect, oversee, or control nuclear safety, directly or indirectly, it belongs. That is why the baseline dives down beyond supervisors. Operators, maintainer technicians, safety case authors, peer reviewers, and control room teams are often where safety is made real.
The guide even touches on emergency staffing and decommissioning, which often get left until late. What does it demand there?
It expects you to plan and justify staffing across all states, including accident conditions. The accident management principle requires you to identify how many people you need and the skills they need to manage different accident types. For decommissioning, your safety case should demonstrate appropriate management organization and adequate personnel resources, and you should show continued suitability through an organization and staffing baseline. The Western European Nuclear Regulators Association safety reference levels and International Atomic Energy Agency requirements align with that. Justify your structure, analyze resource needs, and document responsibilities and communication lines for normal and accident conditions.
I noticed a legal thread on record keeping and external regulations that often gets missed in operational discussions. Can you connect those dots?
Certainly. License Condition 6 requires adequate records to demonstrate compliance with license conditions. Treat the nuclear baseline as one of those critical records. The Management of Health and Safety at Work Regulations, 1999. Regulation 5 requires arrangements for the effective planning, organization, control, monitoring, and review of preventive and protective measures. Regulation 7 requires the appointment of one or more competent persons to assist in undertaking the necessary measures. Regulation 13 requires that every employer ensure that their employees are provided with adequate health and safety training. The Health and Safety at Work, etc. Act 1974, Sections 2 and 3, place overarching duties on the employer for employee and public safety, and in practice, when you allocate responsibilities in your baseline, make sure it is clear who holds duties under other regimes as well, such as the ionizing radiations regulations, and that your safety management prospectus, baseline, and management system all say the same thing.
If you were wearing your inspector hat, walking onto site with this guide in one hand, what would you expect to see? No hedging.
I would expect to see clearly defined criteria for which roles enter the nuclear baseline, alignment between the baseline and the safety management prospectus, inclusion of off-site corporate roles and tenant oversight, a breakdown to the level where roles no longer impact safety, the ability to filter out non-nuclear roles, a rational derivation of staffing, numbers needed, numbers in post, and why that is adequate, a live understanding of shortfalls with contingency and recovery plans, a competence framework linked to suitably qualified and experienced person registers and an audit trail for role requirements, a mechanism to close competence gaps and succession issues, explicit identification of design authority and intelligent customer roles and their succession plans, embedded contractors included and flagged, with the employee-contractor balance actively managed, robust project controls and intelligent customer oversight for contractors outside the baseline, a vulnerability analysis that names singleton roles and demographic risks with action plans, meaningful indicators, complement, competence, nuclear safety achievement, monitored at a sensible cadence with triggers for action, and finally, license condition 36 compliant change control, periodic reviews, and obvious senior-level oversight. In short, a baseline that reads like the spine of the organization, not an afterthought.
Last piece, the document keeps returning to culture without ever using that word as a crutch. It says leadership, management system, learning, and decision-making have to reinforce this people safety case. If a board asks, what do we sign up to here? What is your answer?
You sign up to owning the safety case for people. That means leadership that sets standards and resources the baseline, a management system that integrates nuclear safety with other demands without letting them erode it, transparent, prudent decisions, especially about organizational change, learning from your own experience and others, and a constant eye on the health of your capabilities. It is also a promise to retain enough in-house competence to understand your plant and licensing basis, to act as intelligent customer for all safety-relevant work, and to keep the design authority strong. Done well, the nuclear baseline becomes the way you see, plan, and defend the organization that keeps the plant safe.
Perfect. The Office for Nuclear Regulation's Technical Assessment Guide on the function and content of the nuclear baseline is, frankly, a master plan. Define the roles, prove the numbers, assure the competence, retain control over your contractors, and keep the whole thing living under License Condition 36. Tie it to the Safety Management Prospectus, align it with Safety Assessment Principles, Western European Nuclear Regulators Association reference levels, and International Atomic Energy Agency standards, and track it with indicators that matter. That is how you turn "we think we are fine" into "we can demonstrate we are in control today and tomorrow." Thanks for listening, and thank you for the insight. See you in the next one.